Hey everybody, this is John for MTGO coming at you with a quick deck tech before we get into some more Rakdos Scam play. So for those of you keeping chronological track, this was actually a league that I played before our 101 class version of Rakdos Scam to familiarize myself with the deck a little bit, since surprisingly it's a deck that I had not played much before. So this version is a little bit different than the version we played in the 101 video. Primarily the devil is in the details. The key of the core of the deck is still the same. You still have the Ragavan, Dathi Voidwalker, Mopey openings, along with your typical interaction for red-black decks, Thoughtseize and Fatal Push, as well as copies of Terminate, because, well, there's a lot of things in the format like Murktide that just need to die. The real power of the deck, obviously, the 8 Scam creatures, 4 Fury, 4 Grief. You can either put a 4/4 double striking creature into play on turn 1 or double Thoughtseize your opponent, leave behind a 4/3 menace creature. Obviously, the things that enable that are the Undying effects, Feign Death, and Undying Malice. You pitch these cards on turn 1, and then Undying Malice or Feign Death. That's where the deck gets its nickname, the Scam, because you're scamming your opponent in those early turns, hoping to win before they recover. And then surrounding that, you are a respectable Rakdos midrange deck. In order to help fix the wrong half problem, you're running things like Seasoned Pyromancer. Some versions run Fable the Mirror Breaker. This puts bodies into play, helps you get rid of cards you don't need and draw some more cards, get you some velocity in the mid-game, and potentially turn some extra lands into actual usable cards, or just kind of solving the wrong half problem that these Rakdos decks sometimes suffer from. The other flex slots in this deck, a copy of Lightning Bolt, a couple copies of Shieldred's Edict, which is the new Diabolic Edict effect that is a little bit more specialized, plus it can also hit Planeswalkers. Then Kolaghan's Command as another grindy card that allows you to rebuy creatures, destroy artifacts, deal 2 damage to targets, and force opponents to discard cards. And then, finally, the sideboard, which is a little bit different than the one we played before. 2 copies of Torok, pretty much good against anything Omnath-based or blue-white control-esh. Can also come in the mirror match and those kind of slower, grindier matchups. Could consider bringing in against something like Burn just to get cards out of their hand, but a little bit slow in that regard. Fatal Push, we need a little bit more interaction for early creature rushes, which obviously when you're already playing a Fury deck shouldn't really be a problem. But, there are decks that exist like Hammer Time that can overwhelm them. Hitsugu kind of doubles as both Hammer Hate and Slow Graveyard Hate against some decks. Additional copies of Blood Moon, because that's one of the things that really power the Scam deck. Your Ragavan Blood Moon openings, as well as your powerful Scam openings that we talked about. Surgical Extraction, along with Unlicensed Hearsts. This person that designed this deck really didn't like losing to graveyard-based decks. Hearst obviously has the downside of being shut down by... actually, no, it does not get stopped by Leyline Sanctity. But both of these help against any type of graveyard nonsense, Living End, the Mirror Match, Murktide, that kind of stuff. Whether you'd bring in Surgical against Murktide is a little bit different, but you need to bring in Surgical against decks that have particular weaknesses. Combine this with the Dathi Voidwalker in the main deck, and you really have a lot of graveyard hate. Then Ratchet Bomb, Filigree Silence, these are kind of your side steps for things like what people would normally pithing needle, something like Engineered Explosives. These kind of serve the same purpose, although they're a little bit slower. Filigree has a little bit of a different text on it, but effectively is another copy of Ratchet Bomb, just with a different name. And that's pretty much the deck. Let's get into some matches and see how we do. Alright, before getting into the matches, so the channel has morphed a little bit, and what we're in the process of trying to do is I have a large back catalog of old YouTube content that I'm trying to update, get updated titles, get updated thumbnails, get updated descriptions and such. But the long-term goal is to kind of have like a playlist for each, at least tier deck in the format, and at least some brief gameplay or whatever for some of the more decks you don't see as much. That's the long-term goal. Now this project could take a while. That's why we're working on Scam and some of these other decks that there are kind of holes in the thing overall. But in the end, we're going to have kind of a nice long playlist, mulligan guides, basic sideboard guiding, that kind of stuff. That goal is to kind of have like all these for, all the top decks. Murktide, Creativity, Scam, Hammer Time, Amulet, all these other decks. It's very similar to how in-depth I go on Burn, but probably to a much lesser degree because, well, I've been playing Burn for the better part of 5.5 years. But there are also some old stuff in the archives, things like Skred, Ban Eldrazi, the old Arclight Phoenix decks. So we'll kind of get that stuff updated if people want to go back and watch that kind of stuff. Now, the camera work and stuff isn't anywhere near as crisp as the newer stuff, but alas, when you've been doing this for almost 6 years on this channel and then 7+ years overall, you get some stuff that changes over time. But it's kind of a long-term goal with the channel, but you're here for some scam action. Let's get into the games. On the play, obviously. Opponent reveals Gigantha the Wellspring. This hand's pretty reasonable. We don't have a scam start, but we do have Thoughtseize or Ragavan and potentially Blood Moon. So, obviously, I feel like this hand's a keep. We go turn 1, Moan K, and pass. Our opponent goes Scalding Tarn into Watergrave. They Thoughtseize and take our Blood Moon. Although notably, Ragavan does hit here. It hits a Bloated Delta. We Thoughtseize and see their hand of Thoughtseize, Drown in the Lock, and a bunch of lands. So, if I had to guess at this point, I'd be saying Grixis Death Shadow, because that's a whole lot of shocking going on. But notably, no way to kill Ragavan. So, player land and pass. Thoughtseizes, takes the Kolaghan's Command. Thoughtseizes again, takes Ragavan, goes to 7, sure. We have a Feign Death effect, which not the best, but could be okay. Draw a Bauble off our opponent's deck. Go ahead and... Okay, so they have DRC. They're going to have a blocker for our Ragavan, unfortunately. You get to draw a card, which is land into land, sure. No reason to attack here. We have all the mana in the world. So, Fatal pushes the Ragavan, so they drew a removal spell finally. We do Feign Death it, because we really have nothing else to do with it, so. Opponent does have to attack here with Dragon Rage's Channeler. They draw back-to-back removal spells, which mildly annoying. They put Gigantha in hand and swing. We draw Feign Death, sure. Opponent draws Expressive Iteration. So they'll be able to cast Gigantha next turn. We just draw yet another land. Opponent casts another iteration instead of just casting Gigantha for the win. Put another DRC into play, and they hit us for 3. Does not look like this is going to be a win for the home team here. And we draw another Undying effect. So, not the best show in game 1, but let's get into our sideboard options and see how we do. Alright, so back for game number 2. Poured out the Thoughtseizes, which makes sense. Brought in one of the Blood Moons. The copies of Hitsugu Consumes All. And then boarded out Children's Edict, I guess because we thought Push was a little bit more of an efficient removal spell. The thing about this particular version of most likely Death Shadow, because it being Grixis and all, their threats are probably DRC, Ragavan, Death Shadow, possibly Ledger Shredder. So it's unlikely we're going to need to kill something like a Murktide, like the blue-black Death Shadow deck that's running around somewhat. And obviously Blood Moon is reasonable, but it is a little bit clunky. This hand has the Scam opening. Obviously, we're not going to pass that up. We could put a large Fury into play, or we could double Thoughtseize them. I'm not really sure which one's better. I think I end up going for Fury here, simply because it's more pressure. Yep, we Fury, and then we can follow up the following turn with a Grief. Opponent fetches Basic Mountain. Draws Ragavan, sure. We attack, they choose not to block. We go ahead and Fatal Push. Opponent goes to 8. Plays a Thoughtseize, takes Kolaghan's Command, plays a Monkey and passes. don't even put the idea of Blood Moon in their hand. We terminate, and the game ends quite quickly. And here you see the power of Scam. You know, like I said, there aren't a ton of removal spells that actually kill Fury for 4. Unholy Heat, once it's Delirious. Terminate does. But, you know, some of the commonly played ones like Fatal Push, Bolt, those kind of things don't kill it. So, you know, alternatively, we could have griefed, but grief wouldn't have been the exact pressure that a Fury was. Boarding, it looks like we largely kept things the same for game number 3. Though we do have to win a game on the draw. Terminate Blood Moon Grief. Feels a little slow, but I guess against the Thoughtseize deck, yeah. Kind of keep these hands. Opponent with double Mishra's Bauble, which is fine. We proceed to draw another land, because we need one. Opponent has their 3rd Bauble of the game. Fetches Steam Vents. Baubles themselves. Has another land. Plays Monkey. We'll go ahead and fetch, presumably, Blood Crypt here, since we already have the 2 Swamps in hand. Opponent goes a little bit weird here. We just terminate the Monkey. We could have Grief to potentially clear the way here, but I feel like getting Ragavan off the board is relevant against a deck that's, you know, trying to do this kind of stuff. Just go ahead and grief them. Try to clear out the way for Blood Moon to be relevant, in case they had a Drown Lock or something. Their hand's going to be all mountains. So they put Gigantha in hand, which is not only terrifying, but pass. They continue to hit us with a 2/2. We draw Fury, which allows us to deal with their thing, but they obviously have the answer for it in Unholy Heat. But at least we got their 3rd off the board. We continue to draw lands. Probably should hold it. Well, I guess holding it in hand doesn't really do a whole lot for us, huh? Opponent just passes. We go ahead and bring back Grief because we know they have Gigantha in hand. We cast a Grief. They kill it. We get to take their only castable card, which is Gigantha. And they finally hit their 5th land. Now we just get to empty our entire hand this turn. Grief. They have another Unholy Heat, which is fine. Give them with a hand of basically uncastables. Get to draw 2 cards. Play a Monkey. And our opponent is basically dead here. Grixis Shadow always was a little bit soft to Blood Moon effects, so doesn't surprise me that Blood Moon's still pretty good against them, even with a different era and them having different cards in their deck. But Death Shadow, Ragavan, DRC, we didn't see Ledger Shredder, so it's possible those were their only 12 threats. But you know, you still get to play Expressive Iteration. Basically, you get to play all of the good black cards along with all the stuff you like in Murktide, except for Murktide, so it's still a pretty solid deck, even without Lurrus these days. Alright, we're back for match number 2. A little bit of a clunky hand here, but I don't think this is a handy mulligan. Opponent did mulligan to 6. So they lead on Misty Rainforest, which could be a lot of decks still. We go ahead and lead on Blood Crypt. They play Breeding Pool and Cycle, so Living End, Cycle again. Can we land a Blood Moon before they go ape stuff here? Probably not, but yeah, quick Shardless Agent. And we're on to game number 2. Beginning to see why there's so much graveyard hate in our deck? Maybe. Anyways, match number 2. Alright, match number 2. So we board out a lot of our spot removal. You know, Fatal Pushes. We leave in, or terminates Kolaghan's commands. Bring in anything that targets the graveyard. You know, Surgical Extraction, Unlicensed Hearse. Basically anything that targets the graveyard. Could have potentially brought in Hitsugu, but we chose not to for this game. So, Maybe we were a little over-prepared for the graveyard. This hand, very reliant upon Grief to be relevant. Surgical Extraction, obviously pretty good. The one thing to consider about Living End is they do like to board Leyline Sanctity, so opponent does mulligan to, of course, they have the Leyline. So we just go ahead and pass. Still probably should have griefed here to get some pressure going, but chose not to. Finally cast a grief this turn, just to feign death. Opponent has a Dead Gone, which gets us here, unfortunately. But not a card I'm used to out of Living End. Then again, I'm not the most biggest fan of Living End and or its game plans, so every time I play it, I seem to run into mass graveyard hate deck. So Seasoned Pyro here, pitching our non-graveyard hate pieces, just getting some pressure into play. Our opponent does not Violent Outburst here, so maybe they don't have a Cascader. They decide to go Waker of Waves into Curator of Mysteries, into Straight Riverwinder. Not entirely sure why they do all this main phase, but Thoughtseize is kind of a dead card. Just start pressuring our opponent here. Opponent still doesn't seem to be finding a Cascader. Got a little bit lucky that this game has gone on as long as it has. We find a Grief, so we just go ahead and hit them for 4. Presume we're just going to play our 3/2 Menace creature and pass. At least if they... Okay, Undying Malice, sure. Cast an Endurance. Puts our graveyard away. They block Seasoned Pyro. That's a good way to cash out cards, I guess. They Endurance us again. Which is, you know, whatever. Opponent goes to 1. And Cycle Architects of Will. And they concede. So we were obviously very fortunate there that our opponent saw like 24 cards and didn't find a Cascader, but sometimes you gotta be lucky. And we didn't show them any of our graveyard hate. So anyways, on to game number 3. Number 3, we did board out some amount of our Thoughtseizes and brought in Hitsugu because, well, they're going to mulligan the Leyline anyway. We may as well, you know, have all of our hate pieces in. Kind of hard to turn down the hand of... Why did they bring in Ratchet Bomb of all things? Yeah, it looks like I brought in Ratchet Bomb and Filigree. Guess we want to answer the Leyline or just a way to clear their board, I guess. I don't know. Seems a little loose, but here we're going to get to lead on Ragavan into Blood Moon. So as long as they don't have Dead Gone or something like that. They lead on Leyline of Sanctity, which is fine. We play Monkey. They just don't fetch basics. In a deck that can really kind of get away with just doing what they do, we fetch, we play Blood Moon, they have Force presumably, they cycle Waker of Waves, and you know we have Blood Moon, like... Like, yeah, you know we have Blood Moon. What else do you want me to say? And our opponent concedes that because they can't cast spells, and we have multiple pieces of graveyard hate, even despite having these 2 Filigree, Silence, Ratchet Bombs in our hands. So, opponent should have fetched Island or Forest, or should have fetched Island, maybe had a chance. But, alas, you know, especially since Brazen Borrower is so frequently in those decks. Gotta play around Blood Moon when you can. Anyways, on to match number 3. Alright, we're here for the third match. Unfortunately, we lose the die roll. Interesting hand. We don't have a scam ability, but if we do draw a scammer, we're in decent shape. We have Thoughtseize and the Voidwalker, or Voidwalker then Thoughtseize, so it seems like a solid hand overall. Opponent leads on Forest into Ancient Stirrings, into Llanowar Reborn, so we're instantly up against Hardened Scales. Take the Welding Jar. Ancient Stirrings finds Hangerback Walker. We play Voidwalker, hoping to get the game rolling before they can really develop their board. We have Hardened Scales into Ballista. Ballista kills our thing, and we're just going to kind of get waxed here, unfortunately. Yeah, the graft ability is kind of annoying with something like Walking Ballista. So, with an Arcbound Worker, get to make a token potentially. Cast Hangerback Walker, Zabaz. We find a Grief, but not the best time to do that with them being empty-handed. Blood Moon, kind of middling on this board. Would have been great if we could have done it while they still were tap low with their Urza Sagas, but they're going to get an Ozolith. Now they just kind of get to go nuts. So, opponent taps, swings and swings. We decide not to block. So, ironically, I played Blood Moon here, and it actually like lets them turn on their Zabaz. So they didn't have ways to sacrifice all these creatures. Now with Zabaz in play, they're just going to kind of get to destroy target creature they control, make it grow enormous, etc. And just kind of either shotgun us with a Walking Ballista or just make an absurd amount of Thopter tokens and beat us that way, especially with a Construct token here chilling out. So we inadvertently helped them with red mana for Zabaz. So some of the corner case things you don't learn when you don't play against Hardened Scales all that much in the format. So board out the Thoughtseizes, board out the Shielders Edicts, a couple copies of Ragavan in a season. We bring in Hitsugus, Filigree, Ratchet Bomb, anything that interacts with creatures, Fatal Push, etc. So hopefully we'll get off to a nice fast start here. Have a hand of Interaction. Once again, I don't think this is a hand we can turn down, but it's not the best hand in the world. But looks like we keep it. Hoping to turn through Blood Moon does something. Opponent with Cage to stop scamming. We immediately draw Blood Moon, so we play Dothy and pass. Opponent goes Hardened Scales. We, draw Blood Moons, just play them, right? Continue to pressure our opponent. Opponent has Dismember, which is mildly annoying. Blood Moon's not like the best against them. It's good against Saga, good against the man lands, but not really fantastic against. I think we offer no, we just take the damage. They play Automaton, they have the Ozolith. So choose to Fatal Push that. They just let it go. Go ahead and Grief to see what their last card in hand is. It's a Springleaf Drum. Isn't much. We just play another Blood Moon. So we really need a 4th land to terminate this before it gets too big. They have a 6/6. They smack us. We play Ratchet Bomb because we have nothing else to do here. Draw Hangerback Walker. This grows even larger. And at this point, there's pretty much no way we're winning the game. So we need to draw a land. We have Fatal Push, but then they just have Welding Jar. So can fog this, but then this gets going, and So overall, pretty interesting showing for Rakdos Scam. I think we ended up 3-2 overall in the league. We went 1-1 games off camera. I generally choose the more interesting matchups, or at least the more kind of corner case matchups. or matchups that are kind of like we necessarily haven't seen before in the matchups we played. So like if you have a league with like 3 Murktides, you generally don't play it. You don't see me playing all 3 Murktide matchups or whatever, just because redundancy does get a little bit annoying unless the matchups themselves are really, really interesting. So that's why we don't do all the matches, but I do like to get a good spread of them. Do like to show us doing well, do like to show us doing poorly, so that way I'm not accused of saying, hey, I'm a great player and I'm doctoring these videos to show that I'm a great player. I also show that I lose. But if you like this kind of content, especially modern variety, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hope to see you for the next video.